episode of Blood Blockade Battlefront brings new meaning to the term monster truck. The kick-ass-o-meter in this week's episode has reached critical mass, and this is by far my favorite episode of Blood Blockade Battlefront, for a number of reasons. The production value on this show is amazing, on all fronts. The animation, the action scenes are mind-meltingly gorgeous. The artwork is impeccably incredible. The music continues to make love to our ears every single week. Not only that, but this week's episode was action-packed, introduced two brand new members of Libra, we got some much-needed development from both White and Leonard, and it just ended making you feel good. This week's episode was great, so let's talk about some of the highlights. So this week's episode was all about the introduction of two new members of Libra and this 13th Elder by the name of Aligura. Aligura is this demonic Lolita girl who pilots this massive monster truck. And when I say monster truck, I don't mean like a real-world monster truck like, go to the Georgia Dome, Sunday, Sunday! I'm talking like a giant, literal living truck made of metal that eats other giant trucks. In fact, its introduction in this week's episode was amazing because Zap Renfro and Leonard Watch are pulled up right next to this massive red semi-truck, which, even within the confines of this world, is way too freaking big when suddenly this massive living truck comes in and just eats it with its giant metal mouth grill. It's awesome, and what's really great is as they're trying to run away from it, Leonard actually ends up getting caught by Aligura by just falling off of the bike and getting caught on the side of the monster truck. This is where we get to learn a little bit more about Aligura and how she's completely obsessed with fusing people together to make the perfect boyfriend. And that brings us to Dog Hummer and Deldro Brody. So Aligura is completely obsessed with these two guys. First, Dog Hummer, who is this handsome, charismatic, really nice guy. Then there's Deldro Brody, who's a complete dick. He loves being a dick, and that's just the way it's gotta be. Self-righteousness is just being self-wicked to him. He even has his own plaque which states this. It's really freaking funny. Deldro Brody's overall design kind of reminds me of this human version of Carnage from Spider-Man, and this is actually going to come into play later on in the episode. So, Aligura wants to combine their attributes and make one person. So how's she gonna do that? Well, she's actually going to drain all of the blood from Dog Hummer's body. She's then going to take Deldro Brody, throw him into this massive margarita machine of death, grind him into a bloody pulp, and infuse him into Dog Hummer's body. This actually ends up working. The problem is, she didn't count on the fact that Dog Hummer can actually weaponize Deldro Brody by using him as a massive living armor, which transforms him into this big, giant, red hulking beast, which has these massive tusks at the end of its face, which make it look like a graboid from Tremors. This guy is freaking awesome. And like I said, it totally reminds me of Carnage. It's just like a symbiote suit. It's red, it's black, it's super powerful. It has the ability to punch giant monster trucks across New York City. That happens in this week's episode and is undoubtedly my favorite part about this week's episode. Especially when you see that truck flying across, breaking into tons of pieces set to the music, and hearing the unfortunate news that there were literally hundreds, if not thousands of casualties just because of all of the collateral damage. Not to mention all the other members of Libra got in on the battle as well. Kekkai shooting all of Aligura's monsters, Stephen A. Starface freezing everything around it, including the wheels of the massive monster truck, Klaus sending the thing flying in the air, which gave the perfect opportunity for Dog Hummer and Deldroy to completely annihilate it. It was awesome! And it was a really great way to introduce these characters. The other important thing about this week's episode is that Leonard is trying to get closer to White, but he doesn't quite know how to do that. In fact, there's a scene earlier in the episode where he's captured by Aligura and he can't even talk to her about anything. He doesn't quite know how he feels, but he's gonna have to try and put himself out there, and that's what he does at the end of this week's episode. I especially love how when he arrives at the hospital at the end of this huge battle, he just decides to try and run away, but Sonic the Mock Monkey is doing everything in his power to get him to come back, and he ends up running all the way back. Both Leonard and White go on a date to a drive-in movie, and oddly enough, they're watching an extremely weird version of the movie Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and frickin' Danny DeVito, and I just love seeing the caricatures of those characters. and White herself is completely saddened just by seeing this movie, and I'm not quite sure what to take from this. It could have something to do with her actual twin itself. The scene is incredibly heartwarming, and it's handled really well, especially how White gets really close to Leonard, and then as the camera is panning out, you see these roses or flowers right behind them. It just makes you feel good. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Blood Blockade Battlefront? Deldroy and Dog. These guys are awesome. I absolutely love their transformation, especially when you get to see it for the very first time and they punch the truck and end up getting sent flying across the city, and that big final scene where they power up completely and the arm becomes massive and it sends it flying. The absolutely ridiculous overblown collateral damage that is shown from this battle is insane. And it's funny because the citizens of the city just sort of like see this as an everyday event. Things that go down in Hell Salem's lot are insane. Other little things about this episode, they didn't really do too much with White's brother. There were a few scenes where he was hanging out with that one Fempt character, but basically they were there just to let us know a little bit more about this Aligura character, who I'm sure we're going to see again. She was a pretty interesting and ridiculous character. Her voice actor was very funny, but the action scenes in this episode were great. I mean, really, this was a great showcase of the style and action of this show from all of the characters. That was fantastic as well. And of course, that final scene that they introduced with White, you know, I've said it in my previous reviews how, like, her scenes are basically going to, like, bookend every single episode, and that seems to be the case, especially in this one right here. But I really like it. I really think it's an interesting element to the show, and it makes me care a little bit more about the main character and, like, what he's going through and his actual growth, and that's something really cool because Leonard himself is not, like, your typical hero, like in a shonen anime series whatsoever. I don't even think you could classify this as shonen at all. I think it's really like almost its own genre at this point. It's just really ridiculous and extremely creative. On the technical side of things, it looked really good. Just everything worked. Animation, artwork, music, it just worked in this episode. This is one that you definitely should not miss, especially if you've been watching the entire series, or if you're a fan of the original manga version, which I myself have not looked at quite yet, but I want to watch more of the anime before I do that because I'm really enjoying this and I'm loving all of the surprises. And I do know that the character of White is an anime-only character, but like I said, her purpose at the end and the beginning of every episode, I think, is a really great way to expand on the character of Leonard a little bit more and maybe get more into, like, why he has these, like, weird issues with his sister, which they still haven't even gotten into quite yet. So, amazing freaking episode. Deldroy, Dog Hummer, they are freaking awesome. I love their transformation, and I love this episode. It was action-packed and a lot of fun. So I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 5. I love this episode right here. But what about you guys? Did you watch this week's episode of Blood Blockade Battlefront? What did you think of the 2 new characters who were introduced in this week's episode? Did you like the action? What do you want to see from the rest of Blood Blockade Battlefront? Please tell me in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it and share it with all of your friends. Remember, liking our videos is one of the easiest and best ways to help support the channel. And you can also subscribe if you haven't already. That way you can see all of our latest manga and anime reviews and our brand new podcast show. It's pretty freaking awesome. You should also follow us on social media. Thank you guys again for watching. And as always, stay dandy, baby.